Okay, hi, this is James Restock, host of The Mouthful. I'm back today with my friends. Hi, Gay.
Hi, Gay.
Hi, Gay. Hi, Gay.
This is Colin. I work with Colin. He is, it's been 7 years now, which is crazy.
Yeah,
and very
longest 7 years of my life.
Yeah, very sad. I'm sad that I've known you for that long. Should have been 2.
Read.
Well, and then I have Vik here, who is a mutual friend now. We have come to sit down, talk about our life experiences. Colin at work, because we try and be professional at least a little bit. We don't get into as much of the topics as sometimes I'd like to, because you're interesting. You have a unique perspective. You've lived in. Yeah, you've lived in Canada, you've lived in America, you've lived in Canada, you lived in shit, you lived in everywhere. So I just wanted to get your perspective, and I know that you had a much different upbringing and experience. You're a biracial man.
Yes. No, I'm listening.
What is that? You're not? Are you not a bit? No, I'm not.
Definitely biracial.
No. But So you have a unique life experience that I wanted to tap into. Okay. So let's get into it. Where are you from? Why are you here?
So I was born in Anaheim, California. I grew up in Orange County. My grandparents still live there, but my mom and I moved around quite a bit. For the most part, we lived in Sacramento. I was an only child for the longest time, and then that changed once we moved here. But as far as my time in California, yeah, definitely miss it.
Okay, so what ages were you in?
So I lived in California until I was 8.
Okay.
8, 9 years old. And then we moved here.
I always think it's longer that you lived in America.
Yeah.
Because if anyone is living in America, they're automatically tainted. No.
Oh, tainted. Why? By pride?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My best friend is also half American, and it's the worst thing about it.
Half American. Interesting.
No, it's so. I did think it was longer though. I thought you were there until junior high.
No, I used to go back every year to visit my grandparents. But yeah, I moved when I was quite young. Have yet to become a Canadian citizen, but
you're getting there.
Getting on that, yeah. Yeah, I try to go back when I can.
That would be a different change than you came right to Edmonton after that?
No. So we moved to a farm, rural Alberta. The town itself is called Carville, or some other people like to say Carvel, which my mom argues is the incorrect way of saying it.
I've always heard Carvel.
Yeah, me too. We're the only ones, to my knowledge, that kind of call it Carville, aside from our other neighbors, other farmers. Anyways, so we moved from big city Los Angeles to the middle of nowhere. It was quite the adjustment. At first I was really excited, especially for winters. We moved in October, so there was a little bit of snow that came, not that long from when we got here, which I was very excited because I had never actually experienced fresh falling snow. Big Bear Mountain in California gets snow on a regular basis. Lots of people do skiing and snowboarding and sports there, but we only ever went for trips for fun. So yeah, it was nice to experience that, and now I fucking hate it. It is ridiculous. 7 months.
Yep.
I've always wondered why your mom decided big city to middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh, well, part of it was thanks to AOL chat rooms.
Love. I knew it was going there.
Back in the day. I forget, my mom and my stepdad were even telling me what their cheesy usernames were or something in the chat room. So I was like, oh my gosh, so embarrassing. But unfortunately I can't remember that. But anyways, yeah. She ended up marrying a farmer, which is why we had to move here. It's
A
hard to
farmer,
move.
like.
Yeah, it's hard to move a farm.
So what do you mean by a farmer? Like
A big farmer.
An actual farmer.
Yeah, so my stepdad raises cows here with his uncle. With my uncle, his brother.
He's the one I have to thank for that good Canadian beef.
Exactly, yes.
Love it. Albertan brand.
Yeah.
Canadian beef.
You know it.
Okay.
Angus. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a big change. I can't say that would be an easy change for many people, especially gay, such as yourself, because I am not one. Yeah, it would be hard. I've always been the type of person that I grew up in a small town as well, but I pretty much knew that I prefer to be in a city. There's a lot of beautiful things about a small town, so I don't rag on it. I love my town I was raised in. But there's things that, you don't get in a small town where you can get in the city. You can find more people like you. You can find other races. You can find gay men to have sex with. There's all these other things that don't happen in a small town.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think originally when we first moved here it was quite shocking. I remember keep in mind I was a kid, but I was very nervous in my first day of school here because for some reason I didn't know what Canadians looked like. And with my wild imagination that I had at the time, of course, there's the whole American depiction of igloos and it being cold all the time. So for one, I was shocked that it wasn't perpetual winter.
So you were basically not surprised that it's literally everything that it's fucking in the stereotype. It's true. We have igloos. We have everything.
Yeah.
That's how we survive.
Yeah. So, I mean, going with that thought, I imagined that I was going to school and I was going to class with a bunch of Wookiees, from Star Wars or something. I was legitimately scared to walk into my class for clearly a ridiculous reason.
Oh, okay.
So you were giant.
I had met other fellow Canadian humans before my first day of school.
What would you do if you just entered the classroom and they were all like the South Park depiction? They're like,
I would be very perplexed.
That's your new life.
I was pleasantly surprised to find that there were other people that looked like me.
Excellent.
To an extent.
Yeah. So how was it like growing up in the small town?
Not great, to be honest. I mean, you grew up in one too, but from our conversations, we have very different experiences with that.
Mm-hmm. You have what I find very interesting is that you kind of had what one would expect in a way of when I first came to Edmonton a few years ago. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the shitty. Like, there's gonna be so redneck everywhere. But that's it's kind of like the stereotype of what you would expect. But I've met people who had different experiences as well in here or in small towns. So it really sucks that you would have had a bad childhood from who you grew up around.
Yeah, I mean, school is definitely difficult. Once I was later in life, it was a different story. I mean, I got to kind of branch out and be exposed to other groups that I wanted to be a part of and make new connections, so that was great. But yeah, elementary was really difficult. There were only 2 black kids, which included myself, and I'm only half, to be honest, right? In my school. And yeah, there was a lot of teasing, bullying, just stupid stuff.
Do you think it was just kid stupidity, or do you think they actually were racist?
That's a good question. I think that, as kids, we learn a lot from our role models, whoever our parents or guardians are. And I think just like being perpetually in that small community, you get a lot of shared perspectives. So it can make it very difficult when someone very different comes into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that necessarily everyone per se was racist
Mm-hmm.
that did things.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just didn't know how to handle someone that was so different from what they have experienced.
Yeah.
However, I do think that older people that, for example, bullied me and should have known better were being racist. If that answers your question,
Because there is a point where they should know better, they can know better, right? It's
there should be a grade 3-year-old, a grade 3 student having to like stand up for themselves against grade 9 students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I find that there's a distinction is because a few people I was around they weren't even like, I would even call overtly racist, because they were just asking racist questions but wondering. They're like, oh, what would you care? Would you care if I said nigger right now? And I'm like, no, I would be like, don't say that. That's racist. And they'd be like, but why? It's just a word. And they, no other source of knowledge. So they were ignorant in that way. But it's a weird way to describe it. But it wasn't really like racist. It was more just like, it's inappropriate, and it's mean. It is. So I know a lot of people could consider that bullying, but it wasn't really necessarily because I was black. It was just like they were just saying things that like, hey, that's just rude to say around someone. And I mean, even some of those same people even apologized to me when in middle school. They were like, yeah, why did we say that? It was like, oh, and yeah. So I don't know. So it's unfortunate that there was people who were older and could know better, and then were still like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I understand. I've experienced like the same thing as far as people asking about certain cultural references or words, and looking to be informed and educated, but like not knowing the best way of how to approach that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree that's not per se them being racist by any means. I do think, for example, like as far as some of my experiences, I'd always have to take the bus home. People would throw fruit at me. People would stick things in my afro at the time. Yeah, and I think that to me was, apart from, it being bullying, a lot of it had was racist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's no other way for it to be really. That clearly is because they can pick on you because you're different than them.
Oh.
So that's...
The other thing too is like, I mean, being so young, I remember when I was like growing up in California, and when you're a kid, like you don't necessarily have those, same ideas or the ability to automatically see like differences in others, Yeah. I feel like as kids you try to find like more similarities with people. So like for myself, when I was growing up in California, I remember, because like my mom was the only one, that was in my life and like raised me and stuff, apart from my grandparents. But anyways, for the longest time, my friends where we lived were just like in my neighborhood, and we'd always like go around to each other's apartments, houses, and all of that. And there was a lot of Mexicans that were in our neighborhood. And so like growing up, I remember, I was like tan skin. I would have like, a little bit of like, let's say facial hair, like here, there are like darker features, And I remember like one day I went home and I was like talking to my mom, and I was like, oh, like I'm Mexican. And my mom's like, okay, you're not, but like that doesn't matter. Yeah. It's fine. You're a kid,
and then she hated you from then on.
No, but I remember, just thinking that that's who I look like, that's who I was around. So like I must be, just like them or something. And then, moving to Canada and then growing up and then realizing that there's really no one that looks like me at all. Even, for example, Darrell, the other black kid in the school, who's, as dark as you are, like, doesn't look like me. And then here I am thinking that I'm Mexican or something, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not like any of these people.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's very interesting. That leads me to my next question. So
Sure.
you have a biracial skin tone, like you're not even what they would say. Well, I don't, though. At least I shouldn't say, because I don't. Everyone might have a different perception.
Right.
Like, you look fully in the middle in a way. You know what I mean? Not bad or good or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But did you have trouble feeling that you belonged in either category or either group?
Oh, yeah, totally. I feel like that's still something that I like struggle with to this day.
Yeah.
I think that, for a while, of course, like growing up and being, kind of in a toxic environment as far as like acceptance, I was never accepted by like white people fully, or like there was always someone that was there to tell me like, you're different and you don't belong. And then I think as far as, myself trying to create relationships with other people of color, or I guess specifically black people, it was also very difficult because I wasn't seen as black.
Black enough.
Yeah. And so, people would tell me things like, oh, like you'll never know what it's like to experience what like we experience. Or, people would say, even for example, like my name wasn't black enough.
You know what's interesting? An interesting point about that is that when, this is my perception of it, it feels like when people have that, it almost seems like on the verge of envy, on the black side at least, when someone is very light skinned, they think they can be white passing or be more accepted in society. The interesting thing about it is that them doing that actually means it's the opposite. That it doesn't make it easier because they're not accepting, and the white might be like, especially if you're racist or have any ounce of racism, you might be like, oh well, that person still isn't in the white category either. So it's ironic, but it's actually very tragic that one side assuming that you have it better and discriminating against you because of that reason actually leads to you not having it better at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I think one important aspect too, as far as like framing my experiences, like for this conversation and stuff as well, when it comes to my interactions with trying to make connections with black people, like that's something that happened later on in my life. This isn't something that happened like while I was a kid.
Yeah.
For example, Kokopelli. There was like one person in particular where we had like a lot of like the conversations, me trying to understand, their experiences and like cultural differences and views, in terms of like the white black perspective and fights and whatnot, I guess, or clashes in perspectives. Anyways, from Namibia, and they made it very apparent to me that like I'll never be able to relate in some of those ways, and I disagree. I think that yes, when people on one side where you think that you're going to be accepted and then they just reject you too, then yeah, I feel like very isolated as an individual, as like trying to find a foundation for my identity when it comes to my ethnicity and whatnot. Yeah, and I think that it's, I would love to find another biracial friend that, looks like me, maybe has had some shared experiences or feelings as me, but it's very difficult to do. Yeah.
It's very unusual.
Especially in Edmonton, there's not a lot of us, it seems like.
Yeah, true.
Or maybe there are. Come find me.
Don't say that on the internet. Jesus Christ. You're too cute for that. There'll be like thousands of people coming, like hello, like zombies. No, that's really sad, and I don't know. It pains me almost that
I think it's
happened.
Yeah, I think it's sad in the sense that like I spent so many years wanting to belong to a set group.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I think that it's still very positive for myself. It has made me very independent.
So what would you say now? And also, I mean, let's add fagwa into being gay into it. Like, what would you say?
Oh God, yeah.
What would you say? Yeah, that's always a compliment. So fucking black, fucking gay, fucking. Just like Melissa. But what would you say you would identify with, or do you? Okay. So you're talking about your homosexuality, Colin.
That's just how you're gonna start it like that?
Yes. So what I was asking.
No, say that again, but sound like interested.
So you're gay.
Yeah.
So fagwa.
Thank you.
Por qué fagwa?
I can't laugh too loud. People are gonna be like, my ears.
No, stop. You are. Just do it. Just be natural. Be
I hear that some people at work, like when they call me, they pull their headset off.
Don't worry, I will.
Because they know that I'm gonna be like, hi, how are you?
literally never. I've heard your voice is grating, but it is okay.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
I'm used to it. Like, oh, okay.
That was an earful.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. Okay, so anyway, this needs to go into bloopers. Anyway, okay, going forward, you were stating that you. I asked you, what does your identity mean? Do you think that you have to choose, or what do you, or does it matter at all?
Oh no, so for myself, I mean, I don't think that what you look like is what's important. I think that your values, your personality, those things are a lot more important. I don't think that when I'm looking for friends and stuff in my adult life now, that I try to find people that I think I'm going to automatically look like them, and so therefore we will be friends.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly that hasn't worked throughout my life. So,
but identity, what about gayness too? Some people do you think that you have had? Some people need a calling. I know people who are like this that need to find a place that they feel they belong.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for myself coming out, it was, although difficult for me at first, I don't think it was as difficult as simply just growing up and being different from a physical appearance, I think that once I came out of the closet, it was very liberating.
Agreed.
And I think that I was able to let go a lot of the weight that I had, even with some of the racial differences that I felt, and that I was trying to come to terms with for myself.
When did you come out?
I came out when I was 16, I believe.
Huh.
It was grade 8. Sorry, Harley. I'm just kidding. It wasn't grade 8. What am I saying? 16 is not grade 8. How come no one corrected me?
I don't know.
Guys.
I think I was.
Let's do the math. No, that was grade 10. Come on.
Oh, okay.
Grade 8, 16. You both think lowly of me.
I don't feel bad for not remembering.
My goodness.
I wasn't judging you. I was attentively
It was high school.
So grade 6?
It was high school.
I got
grade 6.
I got you beat. Huh.
You came out in grade 6.
Oh,
No,
later
I
achievers.
I came out between grade 6 grade 7. I came out when I was 14.
Oh, damn.
What about yourself? When did you come out?
I have always been out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess I explicitly had to make it clear, in grade 10 as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Make it clear. Okay.
But
Yeah.
otherwise, sorry to answer your question though, as far as how I think that identity is important and stuff. I think as far as the people I surround myself with, the friendships that I make and whatnot, I'm always looking for diversity, whether that be in like opinions, personalities, experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I like to have a little bit of everything. I think it's good.
I think so too.
Make someone all-rounded.
Talk to people you like. Talk to people you don't actually like.
Yeah, learn something.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you didn't catch on that.
No, I did.
Okay. She's angry tonight.
She's taking the high road. That's what she's doing.
All right, no.
This one's a salty bitch.
True.
Did you get that? That was talking about you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I did.
Just making sure.
That side I gave was like
the hatred.
A salty bitch.
The hatred at this table. So Vik, tell me, what is your experience? Where are you from? Why?
With the gayness, or
what's your whole backstory? Why are you here?
Oh, I'm here because this one asked me to join, which is really sweet of him.
That's not a reason to be at this table, so I'll need you to leave.
Here's the consultant for your logo.
Oh God, yeah. I guess. Well, I'm born in China. I immigrated here to Canada when I was 4 years old in 1998.
Okay.
Oh, he's got dates. Yeah.
Yeah. I got books and numbers and charts and tables.
Yeah.
And then
we don't have dates.
Then went to school. I was learning English as I was kind of growing up here, which was an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then, apparently I've always been gay. Never ever thought anything different.
Oh, really?
I remember in elementary school, I had beautiful boys in my school, in my class, and I was like, damn, that bitch is hot.
Well, I mean, it's I definitely believe it's natural, but you never thought like, oh, maybe I might be other side, like, or like
No.
thought I was straight.
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting because a lot of other gay people that I spoke to didn't have that experience, but I knew from like as young as I can remember that I was gay.
I think that's really cool that like you knew.
Yeah.
Like when I look back on like myself being a kid, like I'm like, oh, like that makes sense, like once I understood what exactly gay was in the context of things. But for you to just like know, like that's
I didn't know
awesome.
that if that was the term, but I knew that like I looked at all the boys and I was like, yeah, you're cute. All
Really?
the girls were like, you're okay. Even if they were like really cute, I'd be like, yeah, you're cute. But
you know what? It's interesting because I felt, even though there was some things for a lot, I felt like I was very like, what do you call it when you're not sexual at all? Well, I mean, obviously you're a child, but like I didn't even grasp like what was attractive for. I felt like quite a long, like until, I mean, not, it still is young when I was 11 and I'm like, discover that people have sex on the internet.
Yes.
And then that gay people have sex. Oh, shit.
Oh,
Gay
wow.
people have sex in the internet. That's
Oh.
floodgates open.
Yeah, literally. Anyway, but when some people think like, oh, I think that girl was cute as a little, or boy cute,
right.
I don't really feel like I felt that, but there are some things that I remember distinctly. The other day I was talking to a friend, and it was like, I mean, it's fine to talk about because I was at that age. It's not weird. Like there was these, and I don't even really remember like any of the details. But there was this kid who was my grade, and then there was his older cousin.
Yeah.
And I remember, they were walking, and they meant it like a mean, but teasy mean thing to do when they were walking ahead of me. It wasn't really that mean spirited, but it was a little bit. But they just pulled down their pants like way ahead of me when we were walking to school.
Okay.
And like, not well, because like he was only like he was a few years older than me. Like
they flashed you though?
3, yeah, they flashed, but they weren't they weren't like, oh, I'm just butt. There was also like wang, like.
They fully flashed you.
Yeah.
They were just like, kid, I'm done. I'm like,
full frontal.
And I remember being like,
I think that's what they call it, full frontal.
No, it's back. It is back. But I mean, like, it was small. They took pants down, so it's not just. They didn't do it like, oh, I'm maybe a little bit. It was like me, and I remember being like, I sweat, and I was just walking, and it was way before I actually became, any like puberty, but I remember that as like my first like, wow.
Oh, like I'm attracted to.
Oh,
I
see. Okay.
I also thought his older cousin was like super attractive, like very hot, because he was my brother. Anyway, so yeah, it's weird that you don't necessarily think that, but you knew you were.
Yeah, I think it's just really cool that like you knew, because like for myself, when I look back on it, I think that a lot of it is just like, obviously, like gender roles and reinforcement of that. They talk about like
what you were socialized into.
What do they say? How we're
socialized
grooming, right? They talk about drag queens reading books as grooming our kids, right? I very much felt groomed, because in that same sense, as far as like girls or whatever, and like the attraction, I feel like for myself, I was always also like, oh, like cute or whatever. But I was like trying, and the girlfriends, that I had, I was always trying to.
Did you feel like you were trying to follow a script, but then finding that script wasn't quite matching what you were
feeling? And like trying to like get that, like you're talking about, James, the sense of like attraction, to them, and I was just like, Is this all that it is? Because like I'm not feeling it,
Yeah, I had that too. Yeah. I mean, I was when I was little, I was like dating, but it was for a little while for being very young. But it was also, I remember being one night I just came home and I was like I felt so much pressure about it, because everyone's like, oh, so you guys are being girl. And I was like, and I went to bed one night and I was crying, and I remember my mom was. I just thought about it the other day where my mom was like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay." I don't think she knew fully what was going on, but I was like, she was probably like, "Okay, this is a fag. Wow, this is okay. Like, we've done something wrong, and now this
far
is
quad.
Far quad." Yeah.
Did your parents kind of teach you heteronormative behavior? Like, were you kind of groomed in that way?
I don't know. I don't know what that means, really.
Did they let you play with like Barbies?
No, I know.
Were you only allowed to have action figures?
No, okay, for the examples, okay, that's what I know what the word means, but no, they definitely did not. Like, one of the main things, and they left it up to me, which I really, really respected about them. Yeah. I really think that was like just such good people. The fact that they didn't they didn't say anything about if I wanted to get a girl doll, and I could say you did kind of know from other boys that it's like, oh, this is a little embarrassing.
Right, you learn from school to be ashamed of that.
Not fully shamed, but it was like, you were like, oh, this is weird for boys. It's just like, it's weird. So, but whenever they knew, they saw, I had dolls. Like I'm sure at one point it was a little bit more action figure-y, but not too much. And they didn't paste any word about it. If I had a doll that was literally a Barbie and like did not say. I really respect that, because they weren't used to the gay world. They're from
used to the gay world. So cute.
Why? They were more small towny people, and just the fact that they were. I remember that my mom told me, she was like, they had a conversation when I was very young, because I was very prissy as a little kid. I'm not sure why, because I don't feel like I'm as much high level gay as I say. But I would, if I would go and hang out with girls, my friends, I would immediately want to dress up and be like,
oh.
And it was just fun for me. I just loved it. It's still fun. I still do that at Halloween's. But so they had a conversation like, yeah, I think he might be gay, and then my mom asked my dad if it would matter. He was like, no, I still love him anyway. And I was like,
oh my goodness, that's so sweet.
It is, but it's also a lie. No, I'm joking.
but so like, what was your experience like though? Because from what I know, like your parents are like traditional, no?
It's kind of hard, because they were never really open with me as a kid. They also didn't really groom me in any way. They didn't comment, but when they did buy me toys, which as like an Asian kid of Asian parents, you never got toys, but like when you did, like they did
You
give
never
me
got
boy
toys?
toys. So like I got trucks, I got cars, I got action figures. But when I wanted to play with other things, they never like said anything about it. So when I came out, it was really boring, honestly. Like it's not a crazy like dramatic story. I literally just came up to my mom and she was like, "Okay, what do you want for dinner?" Like that's not what I asked
Really?
you.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I know people where it's like
Interesting.
in other Asian people who they
That's not what I asked you. Sorry. I'm stuck on what your mom said.
Oh, yeah.
I think it is interesting that there's people who have in Asian culture where they can. It's basically an unspoken knowledge that our kid is gay, but you can't. They don't talk about. I have a couple friends who I've met like that where they. It actually isn't necessarily that it's full intolerance, but you just don't bring it up. Like, is that a thing where, like, in Asian culture, like, not open sexuality in general isn't a thing?
Yeah, that is totally a thing, and I think you can say that of a lot of Asian cultures. Is like things that are taboo, which are like a lot more openly discussed in Western world than the Eastern world. They know it exists. They're not ignorant, but you can only talk about it in very small trusted circles. And like, you know, if I were in China right now and I were gay and I came out to my parents, they would be like. The first thing they would tell me is not that, why are you gay? They would say, don't tell anyone. Don't shame our family. Like, don't do that, right? So they wouldn't actively, like, discourage me. I mean, I've certainly some parents too, but, like, yeah, you just sweep it under the table, and then, you know, when you're out in, like, family gathering, and people ask you, like, oh, where's your girlfriend? They'll just say, like, oh, he's doing something. He's just a strange uncle. Don't worry about him. And they'll deflect, and just sweep it under. And I think you can say that of a lot of other cultures that are not Western.
It's true. And I mean, like, it's interesting when you could be... It's cute. It seems like it would work and be cute. Oh, I'm 22. And then, oh, wait, but our son's now 30. Like, there's no... You know, at a certain point, you have to be like, well... But it's just that they don't want to acknowledge it publicly or say that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that if the person doesn't bring it up, then they are happy not to acknowledge.
Yeah. They would never initiate any conversation on that, right? And like, I don't know. I think that's enough.
Is it?
I'm definitely resentful of it because I wish they did take that initiative. But like considering their background, considering their generation, considering the other shit that they were trying to do, I can understand why. Like, okay, it's a step forward.
Oh, okay.
It's not as much as I would have liked because I want to be 100% loved. Yes. I want to be 100% supported. But I can at least be grateful that they didn't say you or kick me out like so many other people do. So I'm actually very fortunate.
It's better for it to be neutral than for it to be fully negative and violent or all these other things. That's fair.
So like, do your parents ever ask you, for example, like when you have your friends over and stuff? Let's say like Colin and I, you know, in the past, did they ever like ask questions about it at all, or they just they don't care? It's like, or they come off like they don't care.
Yeah,
you know?
They've never once asked, and I don't even know if they knew that you were gay.
Really?
Yeah, they're like old and crotchety now. Like they're like just have friends over, whatever.
It's a compliment to you, Colin.
Oh yeah, I guess you're only mid-level gay.
Yes.
You're not gay though.
Yeah, first time.
Straight up,
first time that's happened.
Get out.
That's sweet, but at least at least you have, and you can have them in your life for other things. You mean like you still can? They love you in every way, and
yeah. They try to. It's the way they express it is like very, very different, and not what meshes well with what I like. But I can see that they're trying. They're doing it in their own way.
So when you came over when you were very young, and so what would you say about your identity? Would you say that you feel that you are Chinese? Do you feel that you relate to that heritage?
Yeah,
do you have to put a label?
Kettle of worms.
Can of worms.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. I have always felt like this.
Fish worms. Yeah.
Can of worms. I got the idiom wrong.
Sorry, my thought was thinking.
No worries. I have always felt like this huge conflict and tension in me between like the East versus West because the culture is just so very, very different.
Yeah.
Eastern culture is very collective, community oriented, and like honor and shame and like being a fucking man is like so dumb. But then within that, they are really good at restraint and listening first and then talking later. Where the West was very much like loud and out and proud and like know who you are and like be an individual and be independent. But then the downside of it, you can be brash, you can be rash, you can just mouth off and nobody will ever say anything. So when growing up, I always wanted to be Western. I wanted to be white and Western because I was like, this is way cooler. So I was super, super rebellious. And anything that was like even remotely related to China, I was like, ew, I'm like not a part of that. Even though, you know, people looked at me like I was.
Yeah.
And then now that I'm older, I'm like kind of finding a middle ground because I can see the benefits of both cultural things, right? And I want to mesh them in a way that makes sense. But like that is a struggle every single fucking day.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do. Like just like how you resolve you're working to resolve those tensions with biraciality, right?
Well, you're those two cultures are really juxtaposed because they're completely separate. There's with what the politicians would be.
I also feel like specifically, I mean, when you're talking about China and America, let's just say it, you know, like those two ideals are always, you know, they're clashing with each other. And you hear nothing but bad things about, you know, each other is saying about the other culture, you know?
Which always made me so
really
hyper-aware. Because like you, I was one of very, very few Asian kids in school growing up. So I always felt like, okay, this is weird. And like, I've also been bullied for like, you know, being Asian.
Really?
And it's, there was this one kid in gymnastics class who was, I'll give him point for creativity. He was like, hey, flat face. And I was like, huh. And it took me a second to realize that he was referring to me as an Asian person. And, you know, I was too young to understand it. But it's just
I've heard that for Asians before. It's
more of an older one now, I'd say.
It's fucked up, but
yeah, you know, people make a joke about it, but then they don't realize its racist origins, right? Which is like the really annoying part.
Well, to say it is it's bad.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that specifically, though. I understand what you mean.